Hello and welcome to the Practical Magic Podcast, a weekly dive into ways in which we can live a calmer, more creative and empowered life on our own terms. I'm Kate Taylor, creativity and empowerment coach, and I'm on a mission to help us live an embodied life full of creative expression through my blended melting pot of goodness I call Practical Magic. Welcome to this week's Practical Magic Podcast. This week on the show, I'm going solo to talk about how we can break through our self-imposed limitations. This is on the back of the conversation I had with Coach Susie Ashworth last week about how to live a limitless life. Well, this week I want to talk about how we can live a life without those self-imposed boundaries that we put upon ourselves. You see, the body and the mind can go to extraordinary superhuman strengths. Yes, we know that. You see athletes who are able to complete these endurance tests. You see people like Eddie Izzard, for example, who can complete however many marathons back to back. We are capable of going to extraordinary lengths to push ourselves beyond. But what about in the everyday? What about when there's things that we want to do and yet the fear creeps in and tells us that we can't do these things because of X, Y, and Z, or that we've never been able to do something because that's just the way things are? Well, in my work as an empowerment coach and with the deck, I just want to throw that all out and to shake things up for us all, for us to be able to see things a bit differently so that we can go to those places where we want to live our own extraordinary lives. Because why wouldn't we? We're here to live our fullest experience ever and be a true creative expression of ourselves. And yet so many of us are walking around in this life saying that we can't do something or we shouldn't do something, or there's obligations to other people or limitations we're putting upon ourselves. So I'm going to talk more about how we can remove some of these limitations so that we can do more of the things that we want to do, and that it's entirely possible to do so. So let's talk about, first off, perceived limitations. So you know what it's like when, if I was to say to you now, right, go and draw me a portrait of someone that you love, most people will just get really filled with a sense of abject terror, because they will say 9 times out of 10, oh, well, I wasn't good at art at school. Or if I ask somebody to sort out their year 5 end accounts without having a calculator to hand, they'd be like, I just don't do maths. It's not something I was ever good at. So what happens is the things that we tell ourselves based on old experiences of things that have happened maybe in our childhood become the things that we tell ourselves each and every day. And they become the narratives in which we operate by every single day. And we take them for read. We don't question them. That's just the way things are. Also, this comes into play about the things that we get told as we're growing up, i.e., if you've got a sibling and you get put into a classification of, well, they're this kind of person and you're this kind of person. They're the sporty one, she's the creative one, he's the brainy one. We start wearing these labels through our lives. And while sometimes that can be really useful for us, in other ways it can be really detrimental. So say that you were called the brainy one, and yet actually all you really want to do is be fully creative. You might stop yourself from doing that because you're like, well, people like me just don't do things like that. So we get told narratives all the time, and we get brought up with these stories of how things should just be. Quite often we operate, or all the time we operate, on things that we were told to believe as true when we were growing up, and that may be through phrases that our parents used or what they used at school or in our community around us. So be aware of where your perceived limitations are by the narratives that you tell yourself. And then start redefining what those self-imposed boundaries that you're putting in place might be. So if you're putting boundaries in place of saying, well, it's just not possible for me to do this because I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, then start questioning, because the things we tell ourselves are not always the truth. A lot of the time it might be ego and fear that are trying to just keep you safe from where you are. And so they tell you this narrative of truth, but it can be very contractive. So really notice where you're putting in those self-imposed boundaries through your own narrative and question them. Ask yourself, are these narratives I'm telling myself made up of? Are they my stories of something that might have happened when I was younger? Because the things that happen to us when we're younger, or things that may have happened that have caused a fear reaction, we bring them into the everyday because we've got this powerful subconscious mind that is like this filing cabinet of memory and experience and emotion. And then what happens is when we get triggered by something, we go into the filing cabinet and we go, okay, right, I know what to do with this. But what if we could change that story around it? What if we could change that narrative? And you can do this really simply by doing things like reframing some of those stories and changing some of those questions and questioning some of those questions. So for example, if you were saying to yourself, I can't do this because I can't change my job because what's going to happen, or I can't step out of this job because I'll never make any money again, then ask yourself and question that belief. Where's the evidence coming from? Are you never going to be able to make money again? What kind of money do you think you're not going to be able to make? What kind of time do you think you don't have? Is there time? Could you find time? How can you create time? Because the negative chat, the negative shit will just tell you that this thing is true and you've got to believe it. But what if you could question it? What if there could be a different way of looking at things? And then start really noticing. I've talked about this a lot before in some of the podcasts. What's expansive versus contractive language? For example, our intuition, that thing that really wants us to move forward and is your truth, will be expansive. So it will be able to have a different question or answer to some of those questions. It will say, but there might be another way of looking at this. What if we did this? And it will always have your best interest at heart. Whereas ego is contractive, fear is contractive. It wants you to play small. So just be really aware of the language that you're using, not just verbally, but in your mind as well. Because the language that we tell ourselves, whether we're speaking it out loud or we're speaking it internally, is the language that we're directing ourselves with. So let every part of yourself, if you want to remove limitations, if you want to expand beyond, talk to yourself in that way that uses expansive language, because that tells every part of your body, your energy, and your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, that you are ready to make this action and take things and do things differently. Moving on to the subconscious mind. So I talk about this a lot. I'm obsessed with the way that we are, what it means to be human. And we have this incredibly powerful computer that goes on within us, which is the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is made up of our skills, it's made up of our memories and our beliefs and our experiences, and it's also the thing that powers how we live every day. And so the subconscious mind is responsible for 99% of everything that we do, and 1% of that is conscious thought, is our thought. And the conscious thought, it acts like a net and a filter. So everything that goes on around us acts like a net, and then we put it into the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind may have been programmed in a way that we've talked about already, in terms of the things that we tell ourselves, the patternings and our programmings. But if you can use the reprogramming of some of those old habits that don't work for you to help you in a more positive way that get you beyond your limitations, then this can be one of the most powerful things. And this is what we do in NLP. This is what happens in hypnotherapy. It's allowing to get beyond conscious thought, to go into that filing cabinet, and instead of having a file that says, I can't do something, you put in a file instead that says, it's possible, it can happen, it's already happening, because the subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between what's real and imagined. So what we're giving instruction to is basically what we get. The subconscious mind just works on a very systematic approach. So if we tell it to do something through conscious thought, it's just going to do it. So regardless of whether that's a positive or a negative, it's just going to do what you give it. So imagine if you could create the conditions for going beyond your limitations in a way that felt vibrant and fun and powerful and empowered, like ready to tell yourself and your whole being that this is what's going to happen. And to do that is about setting positive intention. This is something I do every day. It's something that I do with clients. It's something that says, this thing that I'm going to do that's going to rock my world is already happening. And what you do is that you state it in the positive. You state it in a way that it's already happened, because what you're doing then is you're giving your subconscious mind and your brain an instruction to just go for it. And you're also telling your body, because what we can do is when we reset this powerful subconscious programming to a way that's going to work for us, we then shift our mindsets, we shift beliefs, and we create new ways of doing things, and we create the habits to do that. So when we set that positive intention into the subconscious mind, we're also going to use the power, which is that thoughts create a physical reaction in the body. Just for a moment, thoughts create a physical reaction in the body. So you'll know the difference between when you're having a really shit day and things are not going well, or you're feeling really unmotivated, or that you just don't have what it takes to do that thing. You'll notice how your body feels. Just tune in for a moment. How does your body feel right in this moment? If you're listening to me and you're getting pumped up and you're getting excited about the possibilities, notice what happens in the body. Thoughts create a physical reaction. And actually, physical reaction creates thoughts, because we've got a super powerful highway between the brain and the body, which is the brain-body connection. And there's this amazing nerve called the vagus nerve, which sends signals up and down. It's like a constant information highway, sending signals up through the brain, through bodily reactions, and vice versa. So if you can empower those positive intentions, i.e. this thing is already happening, and telling your body that it's happening too, put your body in a really powerful state, and it's just like putting rocket fuel into everything. Imagine for a minute if you had that really powerful thought and positive intention, but your body's slumped over. You're telling your body you're not really ready for it. But what if you could flip that around? Because if you get yourself into like, yes, I'm ready to do this, then it's sending those signals back up to the brain of like, yeah, we are. Come on, let's make this thing happen. So like I say, it's like rocket fuel. And then go to the place that feels good. We use this as a compass when I teach Koya, to invite people to move through their experience to a place that feels good. So when you're feeling into what it feels like to live beyond limitation, where is the place beyond limitation that feels good for you? Where is the place that sets your soul on fire? And use that as the compass by which to be guided, rather than the thing that makes you feel contractive and doesn't feel good in the body. Because the thing is, the body never lies. The body and the unconscious or subconscious, basically the same thing. This powerful tool that we've got. So use all of yourself and your wholeness to go to a place that feels good and be guided by that expansive intuition. Program that powerful computer that you've got, which is your subconscious mind, to break through those perceived stories and limitations and things which are holding you back, which really don't need to be. We can change our narrative, we can change the way we do things, we can create new neural pathways and superpowered information pathways between the brain and the body to make this shit happen. So that's it from me this week. Bit of a pep talk. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do go over to iTunes and leave me a review and let me know how you get on with this as well. I'm going to be back next week where I'm talking to a gorgeous client and friend of mine, Lorna. It's a really impactful, very powerful and very emotive story about positive grieving. So in the meantime, I really hope that you enjoy moving beyond limitations this week. And if you like this kind of stuff and you want to get your empowerment going for your 2019, because we're thinking about that already, I have got a workshop that I'm planning in Worthing on the 12th of January, which is about activating your magic for 2019, how to create, magnetize and embody all this good stuff so that you can have powerful goals with soul, how you can create the conditions for your own success, and how you can embody that into the body through movement, through breath, through everything that we're doing and creating. So do go onto my website, katetaylor.co, go to the speakings and event page and you'll see all the information there. It's going to be really great, so come and join me by the sea. So until next week, wishing you a week beyond limitations.